Welcome back to the Making the Madness College Basketball Podcast. This is Jonathan here with Sean. We're going to go through the SEC. It was, much commented. We got a review from someone whose name is Do the SEC First. He said, do the SEC first. I'm a big fan of y'all's show. Thank you, Mr. Do the SEC First. We will start with the
What
SEC.
a name. What a name.
It is one of the top names on the reviews list.
Probably there's only like 27 of them, so let's get to like more than 27. How about that? If you enjoy the podcast, it's growing every week. Make sure to leave a review if you enjoy. We definitely appreciate it, and it helps the podcast grow.
Yeah. I guess we'll shout out our other reviews. We have Tristan did a review. Mug. The Sports JD. And Radio Boys. I think that's it.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's all in the past year. So.
All right. Well, we'll build upon that.
All right. There we go. Yeah, we're going to build upon that. Before we do talk about the SEC, because we have to do the SEC first, we have to start out though with Jalen Duren. He's decided to reclassify, and now he's heading to Memphis. Certainly a big pickup. Sean, you are the Memphis hype man. I'll let you lead off with this one.
Well, before I get into Memphis, I just gotta say I was completely shocked that I somehow made it in the video. So you have like the first, I think at the 8-second mark, if you haven't heard the Jalen Duren commitment video, I am at like 8 seconds or something, saying on the last podcast that Amani Bates is a better player. He is a better player, and I will die on that hill. It was funny though, because it was like Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander the first 7 seconds, and then it's just me. So like I wonder, like going back, like if Jalen Duren watches that video.
Wait, here it is.
Okay.
I know what number one players in the country usually look like. I simply just did not see that with Jalen Duren. 7 out of 10 times I'm taking Kentucky.
But he could also go pro. I think Bates is a better player.
Jalen Duren is going to reclassify.
Yeah, I mean, he is a better player. That's true. I will stand by that. But I saw the dude who made the video. I forgot his name. Sorry. But very cool video. I don't know how he found the podcast though. That was quite interesting to me.
Well, I think we probably titled it like Jalen Duren reclassify. So he wanted to. No, it was in the episode notes.
Yeah, I mean, it was just wild though. I usually never watch these commitment videos, but I watched this one for some reason, and I just like am listening to it. I think I was like half asleep, waking up from a nap, and I'm just like, is that me? And then like I sent it to a few people, and I'm like, I think that's me. And then I went back and listened to the podcast. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I was just like, that was the most weirdest thing I've ever had happen to me in my life, probably. I was just like, I didn't expect to hear me on that video. And pretty interesting because, shout out to the one dude in the YouTube comments who was like, hey, this guy was in the Duren announcement video. I was, which was quite odd. And I still don't really understand how. But that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, there we go. Sean has made it on SportsCenter multiple times.
Twice.
Yeah.
One, I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm pretty sure nobody who saw that video actually knows who that is. Like who I was in that video. I'm fairly certain people are like, who is that? Like, I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Gary Parrish is. If you at least know college basketball. My voice, I don't have like I have a pretty regular voice. I feel like I don't feel like you hear my voice and you're like, oh, that's who that is. I don't have that voice, unfortunately.
I don't know. If I don't listen to this podcast.
You don't listen to our own podcast?
Well, here's what I do.
Oh, okay.
What I do is I'm subscribed. I'll download it and listen to it on the phone. But I won't. I don't want to listen to my own voice and myself talk.
I listen to every single podcast we do.
Okay. So you're ahead of the game.
So it's I'm a little offended, but I'll get past it. I'll get past it. Hurts the feelings just a bit, but at least one half of this podcast listens to our own podcast.
Yeah, but like I'll listen to like you've gone on Hoopin' with Hoops, so I'm like, oh, that's Sean.
Yeah, I've done that. I've listened to Hoopin' with Hoops with you too. Greg Peterson, always a fun podcast to be on. Might be the most energetic voice in all of college basketball media for sure.
Yeah, very good voice.
He has a voice you'll remember. You'll be like, that's Greg Peterson.
Yeah. Yeah, Greg Peterson, great voice. Yeah, just unbelievable. Like, I guess hosts of the podcast or whatever you want to call it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I guess now getting into the bigger point here, Memphis as a whole, they're in the running for Amani Bates. It's down to Oregon. Michigan State, I guess, is technically there. I don't think they're actually really in the mix. Memphis, and then playing professionally, I think there's a very real chance Amani Bates ends up committing to Memphis and playing alongside Jalen Duren. But when you look at the roster, they're going to play hard defensively no matter what. No matter who's on the roster, that's what Penny Hardaway does. He, a lot of pressure defense, a lot of run and jump defense. They want to force pressure. They want to force tough shots. And, sometimes they'll go double a guy and they'll force a jump shot from the outside. It'll be open sometimes, but, even open jump shots aren't always the easiest to hit. So they're forcing players to make tough plays. They want to force pressure on the ball handler, and it works often. It gets teams out of sorts. They're not expecting it. You can game plan for it all you want in practice, but when you see it in game action against a lot of guys who are NBA level athletes, it's tough to play against. And you look at Lester Quinones, one of the best defenders in college basketball. I think he's going to have a very good year. Alex Lomax missed the NIT, but I think he's a very good player. And the team changed when DeAndre Williams became eligible. They were very close to making the NCAA tournament. If Trayvon Mark doesn't hit that half-court shot, they're probably in the NCAA tournament. And, they ended up winning the NIT. They really easily won the NIT. The only close game was against Boise State. They ended up winning by 3, really off a hustle play by Lester Quinones on an offensive rebound that gave them the lead. But overall, this Memphis team is really good. They have Larry Brown, who is the only coach, I think, in history to win an NBA championship and an NCAA championship. So that's super impressive. They have experience. They have Penny Hardaway, who's improving as a coach, great recruiter, potentially 2 of the top 5 recruits in the class, and a roster where you're returning almost everybody. You lose DJ Jeffries and Damian Baugh and Boogie Ellis. So you lose 3 pretty key pieces, but you had Earl Timberlake from Miami, who is a borderline 5-star guy. And then you return a lot of your key pieces like Landers Nolly, DeAndre Williams, Alex Lomax, Lester Quinones. They're in for a really big season next year. And if they land Bates, they're a top 5 team for me.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see if Amani Bates goes there. I've heard from Kevin Sweeney, speaking of podcasts, I was listening to his earlier today, and he said that Amani Bates to Michigan State is officially a no-go, so I'll take him at his word. Amani Bates is down to Memphis, Oregon, or the G League. Again, this is Kevin Sweeney. If this ends up being wrong, that's on him. But going back to the main point here, Jalen Duren, very good player, very athletic. The comparison that I see a lot of people making is Bam Adebayo, and college Bam Adebayo wasn't necessarily overwhelmingly dominant inside. I think Jalen Duren will be a little bit more dominant in college. I, necessarily don't expect him to, average 20 and 10 and something like that. Memphis doesn't score enough points for Jalen Duren to average 20 points a game, but Duren, you're going to get him. He's going to come in. He's going to probably play the center position, move DeAndre Williams down to the 4. He's going to work his butt off. He's going to defend. He's going to make shots from the interior, and that's really what you want out of your big man. You got him along with DeAndre Williams. That's a very good front court player. DeAndre Williams was one of my top 100 players on the season. He's going to be very good once again, and maybe he initiates kind of the high post. You have some like high post, low post game with Durant and DeAndre Williams. You have Earl Timberlake. You have Lester Quinones. You have Landers Nolly. They can, play on the wing. Defensively, if let's say that's the starting lineup, you have Lester Quinones, who's 6'5",
super
big
strong,
big guard. Earl Timberlake, 6'6" with NBA athleticism. Landers Nolly, 6'7". DeAndre Williams, 6'9". Jalen Duran, 6'10".
And if they land Amani Bates, somebody's gonna have to go on the bench. Probably Timberlake, I would assume, right? That's probably he's gonna have to end up going to the bench there. I don't necessarily think they want to start Quinones at the one full time. He can play the one a little bit. He's solid in the pick and roll game that he's shown a little bit, but he's not, the guy who's done that a lot. So I think you're going to see a lot of Lomax. I think you could play Bates at the one if he ends up going there. So you can go like Bates, you can go Quinones, you can go Nolly, then Williams and Jalen Duran. So that's like you said, 6'5" and above.
Yeah. The only two players below 6'5" are Alex Lomax and Tyler Harris, who I don't think Tyler Harris plays a whole lot of minutes, but
I think he's walking on, so yeah. I don't think he's going to play a big role.
Yeah. Alex Lomax, I'll be interested to kind of see what they do, whether they make Lomax the point, and this could all be a moot point if Amani Bates recruits, whether they go Alex Lomax or at the point, or whether they say, we'll just have Lester Quinones bring it up and then initiate the offense in the high post with like DeAndre Williams or something.
And
like
Williams
that.
is a great playmaker, so I could see that for sure. But the biggest issue for this Memphis team, really the last 2 years, they got a little better last year, but they turned the ball over a ridiculous amount. And it's just, not very, it's just, some of it's trying to play hero ball and you end up losing the ball. You end up getting stripped going to the basket. But it's easy things that could be fixed like so easily. If they just limit they had a game against Cincinnati late last year. They were up like 15 and they were just turning the ball over. It ended up I think Cincinnati got within 3 and they were down by like 12 with less than a minute left. That's how bad it got at some points. And they also were terrible from the free throw line. Late game execution last year for Memphis, I'm not sure if I've ever seen a college basketball team with that much talent be that poor when it comes to late game execution ever. I mean, it was just a mess. They couldn't make free throws and they kept turning the ball over. It was just a recipe for disaster. And when you're bad at free throw shooting and you turn the ball over almost more than anybody in the country, you're going to lose games.
Yeah. You're going to lose games that you should win.
Easily. You can't lose to Tulsa at home and you score less than 50 points. That can't happen. If that loss doesn't happen, they're probably in the tournament. I mean, you look at that now and you're like, well, hindsight's 20/20, but don't lose games that you're supposed to win, and then it won't matter.
Yeah. They didn't necessarily lose the 2 Houston games, but they were.
They should have won the first one.
Yeah, they probably should have won the first one, and then the second one. I mean, I will make I think pretty clear argument. You look at second half of February and beyond, there were not 25 teams better than Memphis. I'm not saying
no doubt.
They were Final Four level team. Like if they made the NCAA tournament, they as like an 11 seed and stuck as the last team in, let's say in place of UCLA, they could have beat
Sweet
Michigan
16.
State, and I think they would have lost to Alabama, but like they could have made the Sweet 16.
That's a tough matchup for Alabama though, just with how good they are at contesting shots and closeouts. That could have been a real issue for Alabama, but Alabama's defense was so elite last year. I do think that changes this year. We'll get into that later when we talk about the SEC more in depth. But yeah, for sure. I mean, Memphis was really good, really, when DeAndre Williams became eligible and got acclimated into playing college basketball again after really being out for almost a full year because he missed pretty much. I think he only played a number of conference games when he was at Evansville, played the non-conference and missed most of the conference games. And then the first 6-7 games last year, he didn't play. So he was out of basketball for a while, and it takes a while to get back into game shape.
Yeah, absolutely. DeAndre Williams, though, he played in the one game that mattered for Evansville, their major upset of Kentucky.
And then they lost every single conference game in the Valley.
Can't necessarily blame DeAndre Williams on that.
No, I don't think he played in any of them, but
it's unfortunate. But
yeah,
Memphis is going to be very good. Should we get into the SEC now?
Yeah, let's get in the SEC.
All right, so we both did like our power rankings for the SEC. Pretty similar power rankings, I should say myself. The top 5 teams are all the same order. 6 and 7 we had flip-flopped. 8 through 11 we had somewhat different order, and then 12 through 14 are the exact same order. We have the exact same third to worst, second to worst, and I mean we all, if you've listened to this podcast already this offseason, you know who's number 14. So the number 14 just sucks. They're garbage.
They're the second worst high major team in college basketball. There is only one team in all of high major basketball that would probably lose to them, and that's Cal.
That's not saying a whole lot.
Cal, they had one good player last year, Matt Bradley, and he left. So now they have no good players. Georgia has at least like half a good player.
Yeah, while we're talking about this conference expansion here, we need to kick out the crap teams like Georgia and South Carolina. Kick them out.
I mean, South Carolina was in the Final Four like 5 years ago.
That's irrelevant. Doesn't matter. Kick them out.
I think the biggest thing is taking, hey, you're a high major conference. Take transfers that are high major players. Stop taking transfers that are like, fringe high major guys. Go shoot for the moon. Get a good player. Instead of like 8 average players.
Who would want to do that?
I mean, Trey Mitchell considered it going to Georgia.
Yeah, they'd probably still be. Maybe it would move South Carolina below them, but I think we'll start with the top team. We'll go top to bottom. We've probably mentioned enough about 13 and 14 for the time being. So we both had Kentucky as their number 1 team. I considered Alabama. I think Arkansas is pretty close, but Kentucky's the number 1 team. There's just so much talent on this roster. Whether they kind of come through, maybe they don't win the SEC regular season. It might take time for all these players to get acclimated. But, I mean, you just look at the guard position. I mean, Ty Washington, Savio Wheeler, Davion Mintz, you can have them all run the point. You have CJ Frederick, who's a sniper from deep. You have Kellen Grady, who's a sniper from deep. Certainly a very good transfer. You have Keon Brooks, who can play small ball 4. You have Oscar Tshiebwe, Damian Collins, who can play minutes at the 4. You have Jacob Toppin. You have Dante Allen, Bryce Hopkins. There's just an overload of talent. There's they could legitimately platoon players and get away with it. Kentucky's, there's just almost too much talent to fail, I think, with Kentucky.
Yeah, without question. And I think Kentucky, obviously last year was a disaster by Kentucky standards, but I think that gets overblown a little bit. I get their record was terrible, 9-16, but they were 49th in KenPom. I mean, Wichita State was, let me pull it up. They were 68th in KenPom, and they made the NCAA tournament. Kentucky's a few late game, eight. Let's see, I think it was 8-1. They had 7 games decided by 5 points or less last year. I mean, that were all losses. You win those games, and you're what? I'm bad at math. You're 16. You have 16 wins, so you're 16-9. That's an NCAA tournament team.
Yeah.
Olivier Sarr ended up with the ball in his hands late in games a lot for some reason, and they just didn't have a point guard that was consistent. I mean, Davion Mintz was fine. You don't want him as your lead point guard at this level, but they were not that bad for a team that went 9-16. They're probably the best 9-16 team 9-16 team I've ever seen. I mean, they were always competitive. They didn't get blown out.
Yeah. Not that we've seen too many 9-16 teams, because most of the time they're playing like 30 games. But I mean, Kentucky was clearly the best one out of the 9-16 teams.
Yeah, and like you look forward this year, you mentioned the talent level. When you have three guys you can interchangeably put at the point guard with Xavier Wheeler, who led the conference in assists at Georgia last year, Ty Washington, who can play both on and off the ball, and Davion Mintz, who proved to be a really good shooter and a reliable player overall last season. I think Kentucky's in for a really good year. If CJ Frederick can stay healthy, he's one of the best shooters in college basketball. And then inside, I'm just curious to see the way that Coach Cal structures it. He played a lot of Isaiah Jackson and Olivier Sarr together last year, and obviously they're not together this year. And you can kind of get away with that because at least Sarr can hit a three. He's not great at them, but he can hit them, and Jackson is just a freak athlete. With Collins, he's very similar to Isaiah Jackson in a lot of ways, but he doesn't shoot threes at all. And Oscar Tshiebwe also doesn't shoot threes. I just don't think you can really play them together for a large portion of the game. I think you're better off playing a lineup of like Wheeler, Washington, Grady, and then going with, Toppin maybe, or Brooks at the 4, even though Toppin's not really a shooter either. So I guess you can go Brooks at the 4 and then Collins or Tshiebwe at the 5. That's probably the way I would structure the lineup, and then put Frederick in at certain points, put Collins or Tshiebwe in at certain points, whichever one's coming off the bench, and then Toppin when you need someone who can really defend. I think that speaks a lot to the depth of the team, but I think managing the way that you actually play the roster is the biggest thing about it, because we've seen that teams who play two big men that can't shoot is just an archaic way of playing basketball these days.
Yeah. I agree with everything. I would say maybe I would put the death lineup out there. Tshiebwe at the 5. Then you have at the 4 Kellen Grady.
That's not going to work.
It could Kellen Grady's 6'5".
He's 6'5", playing the 4. No way.
I've seen smaller people play the 4.
Yeah, but it's Kentucky. They're not doing that. No way. I mean, that's a disaster defensively.
That's the best offensive lineup.
Offensively, yeah, but like at the same time, that's a disaster on defense. So like you can't really do that.
Okay. Well, I would say Tshiebwe, Kellen Grady, Ty Washington, CJ Frederick, Xavier Wheeler. If you're down 2 with 10 seconds to go and you need a bucket, that's the 5 I'm putting out there.
Part of the issue also is when you're playing two non-shooters down low. Xavier Wheeler's also pretty much a non-shooter at this point. He shot 22% from 3 last year on 79 attempts. He's not a very good shooter. So, like, yeah, he's probably going to, in a possession late in the game, 15 seconds on the clock, he's probably going to bring the ball up. Let's say you're down 3. He should not be the one that's shooting the ball. You need to run some kind of play to get Frederick or Grady coming off a screen. Maybe one of them, one of them's like a decoy, and then they get someone else a shot, maybe like Keon Brooks a 3. But you cannot play all 3 of those. You can't play like Collins, Tshiebwe, and Wheeler together that much in the same lineup, because the shooting there is a complete disaster.
I don't know if we can necessarily play Keon Brooks either, because he's shot 21% from 3.
He's not a great shooter, but like he's a better shooter than Damian Collins.
That's not saying anything.
No, but like he can. I mean, and we're forgetting Dante Allen too. Like he shot 40% from deep last year too.
All right,
but
Dante Allen will start at the 4. There we go.
He's also kind of small for the position, but it could work. I could get down with that.
The more I kind of look at this roster, I'm having some major questions now with Kentucky.
It's just the way it's just a weirdly constructed roster, but you have to believe the talent. It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I buy the talent. I'll keep Kentucky number 1. It's just I don't like the fit of the roster. As mentioned, there's too much talent to really fail, but I mean, I don't see this team winning a national championship. They could win a national championship, but I will not be banking on Kentucky winning a national championship with this roster of a bunch of smaller players that can shoot and then a bunch of bigger
Big
players
guys who
who
can't shoot.
can't shoot. Yeah.
I mean, I think what they're really missing is like, I'm trying to think of a good example here, like a good stretch four who is in the portal. Like they're really missing like a Dylan Disu. That's the kind of guy that they're missing. If they had like Dylan Disu, that would be perfect. Because then you can just put him at the four, a guy who's 6'8" and can shoot like 36+% from deep. That's what they're missing in this lineup for sure.
All right, we're trade Dylan Disu for Oscar Tshiebwe.
Honestly, I'd probably do it.
There we go.
Like, I think Dylan Disu fits his team better than Oscar Tshiebwe does. And I like Tshiebwe. He just was really bad last year. And he was just, a lot of people were like, including me, I was like, this guy could be a first-team All-American. He just wasn't very good, ends up transferring. I think, like, a guy like Disu fits the roster better than Tshiebwe does, for sure.
Yeah, because you already have Damian Collins, who's basically...
Isaiah Jackson.
Yeah. Different version of Oscar Tshiebwe.
Yeah, and again, Collins isn't a complete offensive player. Tshiebwe is definitely a more offensive-based big man, so that could kind of play itself out, but, he doesn't shoot. So, I'm just curious to see how the dynamic plays out. That's really what it is.
Yeah. Should we go on to the next team?
Let's go.
All right, the Alabama Crimson Tide. They have a really good roster. J.D. Davidson, the top 10 5-star freshman, he's going to be very good. They have Shackelford and Javon Quinterly coming back. They were the two leading scorers from last year's team. Quinterly doing it off the bench. Now he gets to kind of step in. He'll be the starting point guard, out with Herb Jones, who was essentially the starting point guard last year, and with Javon Quinterly. I mean, that's a really good three-headed monster. You have Noah Gurley, who can make shots. Then it comes down to Charles Bediaku, Keon Ellis, Jawan Gary. They have a lot of Keon Ambrose Hilton. They have a lot of options at the big man spot, but certainly very deep team. I think that's the Gurley, Davidson, Quinterly, Shackelford. They're going to be the four players starting. It's who else is going to start for the team?
Yeah, and obviously Jaden Shackelford entered the portal at one point in the offseason, and he is back. So that's obviously huge. He's been their leading scorer each of the last 2 years. And you can't forget a guy like Amari Burnett. He was a 5-star recruit. He was a great defender last year in his limited time at Texas Tech. He just really struggled to get it going on the offensive end. And when you look at Alabama, I did speak to will their defense be as good? I mean, typically when you have a running gun kind of team like Alabama, they're going to shoot a ton of threes. Almost half their shots come from deep, and they play a super fast pace. You don't have a team that's the third best defense according to Ken Palm in the country. I mean, when you look at Nate Oates' track record, he had the 31st best defense in college basketball back in 2019. That's when they went to the NCAA tournament as a 6 seed, lost to Texas Tech in the round of 32. Besides that, his best defense, again, not counting last year or in 2019, was 114th twice. He did that in 2017 and 2020, which was his first season at Alabama. So what kind of defense will we see from Alabama this year? Their Swiss Army knife on the defensive end, Herb Jones, is gone. So how will they replace him? I mean, are they going to play more like a 4-guard lineup? And there's a lot of names in here that could really step up. Obviously, you have, like you mentioned, the big men. Charles Bediaco is a 5-star freshman. Alex Chico, maybe is that how that's pronounced? He was a pretty highly touted recruit from France. He suffered a season-ending injury early last year, so he never played. But he's a really high upside big man that could end up playing a solid role. Then you have guys like Jawan Gary and Keon Ellis who are going to be good role players. There's a lot of pieces on this team, and they have two pretty solid go-to guys with Javon Quinterly and Jaden Shackelford, to where I think they're going to be really dangerous. And Nate Oates is just a really good coach. All he's done is win throughout his career in his 6 seasons of being a head coach, and I think that's going to continue continue next year. I just, I like the roster and I trust Nate Oates. I don't love the roster necessarily. I think Quinterly could be an all-conference first-team kind of guy. They don't have a John Petty who's going to go light it up from three, and that's what he's going to do. They don't have one of the best defenders in college basketball with Herb Jones. But I think this is a really solid, well-rounded team that have some high upside pieces that could really play Alabama into a 1 or a 2 seed kind of team.
Yeah, I agree with all that sentiment. I like Jawan Gary. He was like he's undersized at like 6'6". Can't shoot threes, but like he's physical, he's tough. You have Keon Ambrose Hilton, who's like 6'8". You have, I think it'll end up being, I'll say their start of the season starting 5 will have Keon Ellis alongside the aforementioned Gurley, Davidson, Quinterly, Shackelford combination. Because Keon Ellis, you can kind of like play, you could trust him defensively to kind of, do work, and he's been at the system. So I think that will be like the first game starting 5. But I mean, I think they kind of did this last year. They rotated a lot. Herb Jones, Jane Shackelford, John Pay Jr. started all the games. I guess Jordan Bruner started all but one of the games. But they were filtering in. They had Josh Primo start 19. They had Keon Ellis start a couple. They had Alex Reese start a couple games. So, I mean, they're not set to a starting lineup. I think Nate Oates will kind of mix in and out of, which players are starting, which players won't. But I think he's going to try to play a lot of different lineup combinations, find which ones work. And ultimately, I think Alabama, just with the overall talent level, they're going to be very good. I don't know if they necessarily have the same level of talent as Kentucky to win the SEC, but I think they're comfortably second, maybe, for me.
I agree. I think the defense regresses a little bit, maybe to like 35th to 45th in KenPom, but I think their offense, which was 30th in KenPom last year, could be in like the 20s. I think they'll be a very well-rounded team. They're a tough team to play against. If they're hitting their threes, it's going to be tough to stop them because threes count more than twos, and Alabama shoots a ton of threes. So it's going to be tough to stop them if they're making those threes, but if their defense isn't as good, they won't be able to have that safety blanket if they're struggling from three. Because last year, even if they were this is why they were a legitimate contender to win it all, because even if they weren't hitting those threes, they were going to defend you super hard. And they'll defend hard, but they just don't have the same level of defenders that they did last year.
Yeah, I agree. Last year they had a lot of really good players. Were elite defensively, a lot of good two-way players, and then Herb Jones, who couldn't make a free throw. That's
improved from the foul line though. He's like 71%.
He improved, and then
71 on the dot. That's crazy. I wasn't even looking at that, and I got it. I'm proud of myself.
And then proceeded to miss a bunch to lose to UCLA.
No, they won. Oh no, they did lose. That's right. I kind of forgot that. Forget I said that.
Unfortunate. But
they went to overtime. Shout out Alex Reese.
Very good game.
Very good game. But their defense kept them in that one. I mean, they shot? What did they shoot from three? 7 for 28. That's absolutely terrible. So their defense really kept them in it.
There we go.
Until overtime, when they allowed 23 points.
That was not it. Not good.
No, but in regulation, their defense was very good.
Yes, I agree. Should we get into the next team, Arkansas?
Let's get into it.
All right.
Should I lead this one off?
Yeah, you and your favorite player, who I'm back on the. I'll back on something later with him.
I love Devo Davis. I think he's awesome. He really changed that Colgate game. He had a huge stretch where he got a steal and then turned it into a nice pass on the other side of the court, leading to a nice layup. Really just changed the trajectory of that game. Because if you remember, Colgate was up double figures with like 10 minutes left in the half, and Devo Davis single-handedly changed the game on the defensive end. And that's the kind of thing he does. he may not be the best offensive player, even though he's really good in the mid-range. Hit that mid-range contested jumper to beat Oral Roberts in the Sweet 16. Maybe he improves his three-point jumper. That's really his big knock. He just can't shoot the ball from deep. He didn't do it a ton last year, but when he did, he didn't make them. So I guess we're going to have to see what ends up coming there, but he has to become a bit of a better three-point shooter if he's going to win Conference Player of the Year or be in that conversation. But his defense is awesome. I compare him to Davion Mitchell in a few ways just because the way they're able to impact the game on the defensive end, they're both very quick, very athletic, and both have tremendous feel for the game, can run the point. They can also play off the ball. They can be a nice complement to a good lead point guard. I think Davis should be the lead point guard for this team. But even when Chris Lights is on the ball, Devo Davis can play off the ball, and even if he's not making shots, his defense is going to be a big presence for Arkansas. I'm definitely curious to see how this lineup is constructed, though, because you can go a few different ways. I've mentioned lineup construction a few different times, but with Arkansas especially, you can go with a really good defensive lineup. You can go Devo Davis and J.D. Notae, Audis Toney at the 3, and then you're playing Trey Wade and Jalen Williams at the 4. 3 of those players, Trey Wade, Jalen Williams, and Devo Davis, are probably 3 of the best defenders in the conference, which brings a lot to the table because if you need a stop, you're putting that lineup on the floor. Toney is a solid defender, not an elite defender, but he can hold his own for sure. Good athlete. I like Toney coming in from Pitt. Stanley Umude, another name. He averaged 20 points a game for South Dakota. I think he's a better defender than he showed last year. Just it's hard to show defense in the Summit League when it's consistently the highest scoring league in the country every year. Then it's tough to defend because everybody's scoring a ton of points. So I think he could be a bit of a better defender at this level because just the systems are going to be a little bit different than what you had in the Summit League. But overall, I mean, you can go with that lineup or offensively. You can go with Chris Likes. You can go with Devo Davis, Stanley Umude at the 4. Who would you go at the 4 probably there? I mean, you can go Williams at the 4. You can go Williams at the 4, and then you can go Connor Vanover at the 5.
Get Connor Vanover out of my face. I don't want him.
He's 7'3", can shoot. He's not a great player, but he's a good offensive player.
Cut him. Get him out of here.
I mean, Notae's probably got to be in there either way. I mean, J.D. Notae is a really good player.
Yeah. I would say Devo Davis, here's the lineup I would construct. Devo Davis runs the point, and then you have Likes kind of playing off the ball, being like a kind of shooter. You have Toney and Umude playing the 3 and 4. They're both going to be small ball, but they can switch off each other a little bit. You bring J.D. Notae off the bench, which he did really well last year, kind of keep that same energy with J.D. Notae, and then you have Jalen Williams at the 5. I think he's in for kind of a really good, sophomore season. Then you still have you'll obviously have Notae. I think that's your main 6 players. Then you have Trey Wade, who's probably your clear 7th man. That'll be the 7 that they ultimately run out. I don't think Connor Vanover gets a whole lot of run. Kamai Johnson, I don't think will get a whole. He could maybe crack the rotation. I guess they have a Cole Mayween as well, but
yeah, coming in from JUCO.
Yeah, I think they have a solid 7-man rotation. Musselman, early in the season, he'll probably try to play everyone quite a bit of minutes, but ultimately, last year, the prime seat, the 2018 year with Nevada, he, late in the season just cut down to 6 or 7 guys and went with those 6 or 7 guys. And that, I think, works well in the NCAA tournament. Which, players are playing well together, which ones you can kind of feed off of. So I think he'll ultimately go with kind of that 7-man rotation, and maybe someone else sneaks in. That's just the 7 I would go with Musselman.
I mean, and yeah, Musselman's not afraid to just completely take a player out of the rotation. Connor Vanover is getting shredded on the defensive end against Colgate. I think he played 7 minutes, and then I don't think he saw the floor for the rest of the NCAA tournament. He played the first 7 minutes, and then I don't think he played again. He was bad, so Musselman was like, hey, you're just not playing again.
Yeah. I think with Vanover, he's so too slow. Immobile.
Yeah, he's so slow. And, that's a big thing he's, not, crazy coordinated either. If you're really coordinated and you're, if you're slow, like Luka Garza, like I tweeted this the other day, he's really coordinated for a guy his size. He's not the fastest, but he knows how to use his body well. Connor Vanover does not.
Yeah, like Connor Vanover literally has like two things going for him. He's 7'3" and can shoot
And
threes.
that's about it.
Yeah, like I guess if you're playing a zone defense, maybe you can play Connor Vanover minutes, but Arkansas probably will not play his own defense, so there goes that. Yeah, he just doesn't work well on the court.
No, and last thing here on Arkansas, if you want to talk about Eric Musselman consistency, here's a stat for you. In all of his years of being a head coach in college basketball at Nevada and Arkansas, even in years he hasn't made the tournament, which has happened a few times. Let me get the exact number here. He's been a coach 6 years. He's made the tournament 4 times out of the 6 years.
So
Actually, that's the exact same as Nate Oates. No, they wouldn't have made it last year. But technically, yes, they've missed it once.
Yeah.
So they missed it once technically. They weren't going to make it 2 years ago. But the biggest thing is they've won 20-plus games every year.
That's impressive.
That Musselman's coached. And 24-plus in all of them except for 2019-2020, which was his first year at Arkansas.
There we go. Yeah, Nevada it was kind of the same thing at Nevada. Like year 1, it was like still building project, and then year 2 they take off. Now you're in year 3. Year 3 at Nevada, he had the high expectations. I think there's somewhat lower. At least some of the sentiment seems to be lower on Arkansas than probably what it could be.
I think it's because of the constant turnover with the team, and that's what Eric Musselman's teams are. I mean, he's really been a pioneer of the transfer portal in a sense because it was him and like Tim Cluse at Iona. Those guys really went after the transfer portal early, and the biggest thing with Musselman is the guys he got originally, like the Martin twins and Jordan Caroline, Jalen Harris, even though he never ended up actually playing for Musselman, were that these guys sat a year. That doesn't happen anymore. So he has these guys right away, and maybe that helps in a certain extent to have guys that sit out and they're able to get acclimated with the program for a year. But I also don't think it hurts to have Jalen Tate and Justin Smith be 2 of your best players and play right away.
Yeah. No, that's certainly important. Then you have Moses Moody, who played right away.
Yeah.
Moody Moses, as Kendrick Perkins would refer to him as.
That video was rough.
And then you have Devo Davis, who, somewhat struggled early in the season, had a couple goose eggs in the scoring department, but really turned it on late in the season, and he has both our attention.
He has lofty expectations for sure, and he has a great work ethic. I mean, he's a guy that is like a lot of guys post like videos of them in the gym. He seems to always be in the gym based on his like Instagram stories. Like he's in there like 3 times a day. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So he's going to be, certainly very fun to watch. Let's get into the Auburn Tigers. Keep it rolling here. Auburn, they're I think a pretty clear like number 4 for us. There's a lot to like. Jabari Smith, the 5-star freshman, he's going to come in, play the 4. They bring in Walker Kessler. They still have players like Allen Flanagan, Katie Johnson, Jalen Williams, Devin Cambridge, Wendell Green Jr. So there's a lot to like here. Auburn's certainly going to be a very good team, and maybe Jabari Smith is better than we think, and that's I think where
Smith is really good. Yeah, I think Auburn's a really good team. What it comes down to for me is how the 2 mid-major guards coming in, Zep Jasper, who was a second-team All-CAA guy at Charleston, good defender, can shoot the ball, can really fill it up. He's just a little inconsistent at times. And Wendell Green, who was a phenomenal passer, really skilled playmaker and can shoot the ball, good drive into the basket, underrated speed. He was really fun to watch at Eastern Kentucky last year. So I think it's just seeing how those 2 play at the high major level. I think Green will be just fine. I think he's going to be a really good lead guard. filling in the shoes Sharif Cooper left. And I think Jasper is going to be a good complement to him. Walker Kessler, when he played last year, he was awesome. I mean, he just didn't play a ton because North Carolina had Armando Bacot and Garrison Brooks and Dayron Sharp. Kessler was the odd man out, but he was really good when he was finally able to get on the court. You have Jabari Smith. You have Alan Flanagan, who's a really good 3-and-D guy, could be a first-round pick in next year's NBA draft. And then you have a guy like Devin Cambridge, who's experienced. He's a junior now at this point. I just think overall this is a really solid team. That starting five is going to be really good if it's like Green, Jasper, Flanagan, Smith, and Kessler. And then KD Johnson, the Georgia transfer, he didn't play until January, I believe, but he is a fantastic shooter from outside. Really catapulted that Georgia team to be in the mix for an NIT conversation. They got hot at the end of the year, and KD Johnson was a big part of that. I think he's going to be really solid as a six-man for this Auburn team. And I think Auburn could end up being a top 2 team in the conference if things play out correctly.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like the last team of this 4 where I can say, if they win the SEC, that wouldn't surprise me. Because, I don't think Tennessee, who I guess, spoiler alert, we have at 5, or LSU or Florida, if they are going to necessarily win the conference. But I think with Auburn, you can say, well, if Jabari Smith plays like a superstar freshman, if Walker Kessler is what he is in those minutes that he did play on the court, and I think he can be a really good player. That's a elite front court, going to dominate the SEC front courts with that two-head monster. Then you have KD Johnson, who can make shots. You have Wendell Green. Zeb Jasper will run the show. Maybe like a platoon of the 2 point guards, but you don't necessarily need them to be super elite. Just kind of set the players up. You have Alan Flanagan coming back, who is very important. So I think there's a lot to like with this Auburn roster. And if things break right, I think they could potentially win the SEC. I'll be a little bit lower on Auburn. I have them at 4, but I think they're a top 25 team.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a really, really good Auburn team. And like you said, if a few things break right, they could be 2-3 seed in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I think they could. I would max them out at a 2 seed. I don't think they'll be a 1 seed.
How about this? This is I have a take. This is Bruce Pearl's most talented team at Auburn.
I can buy it.
Yeah, I think it's
except
more talented
for the 2018
than the Final Four team.
Had Davion Mitchell.
That's true. That doesn't count though, because he didn't really play a huge role.
So, second most talented team behind the team that had Davion Mitchell.
That was a Final Four team, right? Yeah.
No, it was the next year.
No.
They went in 2019.
Right. Okay. So Mitchell sat out in 2018. He was there in 17-18, and he transferred after the year. So the Final Four year, he was sitting out at Baylor. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on the same page. But like you look at that Final Four team: Bryce Brown, Jared Harper, both really good players. Anthony McLemore, he wasn't bad. D'Angelo Purifoy, Malik Dunbar, Samir Dowdy, probably shouldn't have fouled Kyle Guy. Then you have Javon McCormick, really good facilitator. Austin Wiley and Horace Spencer. This team is more talented than that team.
Okay, I can buy it. They had Chuma Okeke as well.
That's true. He was hurt though in that game.
Yeah. That's true.
So they're a little more talented if you count Chuma, of course, and he was probably their second best player.
Well, Chuma
in
was
the tournament.
there.
He was their best player.
Chuma was there in spirit.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe they should have beat Virginia, and they didn't have their best player in the tournament. That's crazy.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it was like Virginia was leading the whole game, and then like Bryce Brown got hot.
He had 12 points. He might have gotten hot. I'm not sure.
12 points against Virginia when
that's true. It's like 30 points.
Yeah. Basically same thing.
Ty Jerome at 21. That's pretty impressive.
That's like 40 points.
Yeah. I mean, that Virginia team, though, was actually really, really good offensively.
Yeah. They just... The other thing I remember about that game, too, was you had so you know how there's the under 4 timeout?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a single stoppage in between like the under 4 timeout. And so it was an extra long halftime.
Really? I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's the one random thing I remember about that game.
That's weird. Yeah. Like, if I saw it again, I'd probably be like, oh, yeah, but I don't remember that, honestly.
It's crazy.
Yep. So now we are speaking of Auburn, let's talk about a player that used to be on Auburn, Justin Powell, at Tennessee.
Yeah. The Tennessee Volunteers, they're number 5 on our rankings. We both had Tennessee at number 5. There's a lot of good players on this roster. I don't see this team winning the SEC title, but you could talk me into them maybe finishing like second or third in the league. They have obviously Kennedy Chandler coming in, the freshman point guard. I think he'll be really good. Was good in the U19 games. He'll kind of run the point. You have Justin Powell, who probably now moves to an off-ball position. You have John Fulkerson back for his 15th year. You have Santiago Vescovi, Victor Bailey, Josiah James. There's a lot of good players in that 6-man rotation. Outside of that, it's a lot of question marks, but I like that 6-man rotation.
Yeah, and when you look at what went wrong for Tennessee last year, they had lofty expectations. A lot of it stems from they just didn't have really good play from the point guard. Vescovi's a great shooter. He's just not the guy you want leading your offense. He's really not. And that was a big issue for him. We saw that last year. Another issue was, I mean, their offense was bad. Part of it was just they didn't have a great point guard play leading the offense. But they also started the year with the 2.5-week COVID pause. So, like, that didn't make things easy. And then they went in the skid late February and heading into March, which led to a loss to Oregon State in the NCAA tournament. They just weren't a very good shooting team, which was a big problem, 33% from deep. Their best shooter was Santiago Vescovi. If you count volume, it's definitely Vescovi, 37% on 142 shots. Then you had Jaden Springer only shot at 46 times at 43%. And then Victor Bailey at 33% on 139 shots. So the team just wasn't very good shooting-wise, but they were really good defensively. You had Yves Pons, who was awesome defensively. You had 2 NBA-level athletes who ended up being first-round picks with Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer. John Fulkerson is another one, though. He just didn't really live up to his expectations. I think everybody was thinking, okay, this is a guy who had 13 points per game in 2019-2020. What's he going to do in his senior year? Well, he had 9 points per game. He had 4 less points per game and was far less efficient. I think with a better guard, you have Kennedy Chandler and Justin Powell both can play on the ball. Chandler's probably going to lead the charge, but we can't forget about how good Justin Powell was last year for Auburn before missing the final 2.5-3 months with a concussion. He can also play on the ball. So those guys setting things up for John Fulkerson could make him a lot better this season.
Yeah, I certainly like the addition of Justin Powell. I like Kennedy Chandler. I think last year, too, you had, like, Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer. You're, like, they're 5-star freshmen. You're supposed to, like, give them the ball, but you also had, like, kind of maybe a, team conflict. You still have Victor Bailey you need to get possessions to. You had Josiah James. Like, you're battling, like, old versus young guys for kind of like minutes and scoring, and never really worked out. Flamed out, obviously, losing quite handily to Oregon State in the NCAA tournament. I think this year you have better like role allocation. Kennedy Chandler's going to be the point. You can have Justin Powell, Victor Bailey, Santiago Vescovi, Josiah James kind of playing off the ball. Then you have Fulkerson inside. I really like that 6-man rotation. Then, we'll see. Maybe they have Brennan Huntley, Hatfield, Jonas Adu, Jemai Mashak. They'll probably play minutes. They have Euros Placevic still on the roster. So I think a team that maybe need to get rid of Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer, as good as they are talent-wise. Sometimes getting rid of a talented piece that just doesn't fit your roster is better than keeping it and having a bad roster construct.
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at when Tennessee was good, I mean, they were good a few years ago. Obviously, the last 2 years were really disappointing. But 2 years ago, Lamonte Turner got hurt early in the season. But when you look at 2018, 2019, Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield, but you had a really good point guard with Jordan Bone. And when he wasn't on the floor, you had Lamonte Turner, who was a really good point guard in his own right. So you had a lot of good playmakers on that team, setting up Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield. Jordan Bowden could hit a three. Kyle Alexander is a great athlete. But, that lineup is a lot more well-rounded than what they've had the last 2 years. And I think looking at this year, you have your big man with John Fulkerson inside. You have your shooter with Justin Powell. You have your point guard with Kennedy Chandler. It's not as deep necessarily with the amount of talent that team had. I mean, I think overall this team's probably deeper with the bodies they have, but that team was deeper with the pure talent they had probably. But I think Justin Powell is a really good piece that will really set this team over top. He's a guy that could legitimately shoot 42, 43, 44% from outside this season. And Kennedy Chandler's a really good table setter. John Fulkerson's really good inside. Josiah James will be your defensive ace. Victor Bailey could hit a shot off the bench if you need him to. They just have a lot of pieces, and I'm buying that this team, it could end up being better than I have them. It's tough because they're fifth for us both, but can they end up being fourth? Third, maybe? I could see it. I don't think they're going to be top two, but I could see it. And the other question, can Rick Barnes get back to, a Sweet 16? It's been quite some time since, to an Elite Eight. It's been quite some time since he's been there. It's been since 2007, 2008 since he's been in the Elite Eight.
That was, I believe, the team right after Durant. So
yeah, they had DJ Augustine, Dexter Pittman, who I believe won an NBA title with the Heat. Am I correct? I might be
that
correct.
Sounds right.
I am correct. 2012. So you had Damian James. There were some guys on that team.
Yeah, Texas was good back in the day.
Yeah, DJ Augustine, man, he's still playing in the league too.
Is he with the Magic still?
I believe so. Yeah.
He might not be playing with the Magic too much longer.
No, and by the way, this Tennessee recruiting class is second in the country, only behind Michigan. Huntley Hatfield, 25th, 5-star recruit. Jonas Adu, 39th, 4-star. And then you have Jemai Mashak, 60th, 4-star recruit. And obviously Chandler, top 10 guy, 5-star. I mean, that's a loaded recruiting class. I mean, they get two big – and the biggest thing about it, early in the offseason, I was like, okay, so if Fulkerson's not back, your only two big men on the roster are – I guess EJ Anasicki was still there, but I kind of figured he was going to transfer. It was Olivier Kamwa and Uros Plavcic. I was like, this team's going to be terrible if that's all they have. So Fulkerson coming back was huge, and adding two really highly touted big men was also huge. I think Huntley Hatfield could end up playing a pretty big role. He's a really, really good big man. We'll see what he does. Reclassifying doesn't work for everybody. It does work. But I think that Huntley Hatfield is going to be a very good scorer in his freshman season. He could allow Fulkerson to play off the ball because Huntley Hatfield could shoot the ball. He's not a bad shooter at all. So you can go with Kennedy Chandler and Justin Powell. Then you can go Josiah James, Fulkerson, and then Huntley Hatfield to round out the starting five. I like that starting five a lot.
Maybe you could move Fulkerson to the bench and have Huntley Hatfield play the 5.
No way. We're not. Whoa. Fulkerson to play the 4 in that scenario probably.
No, we're get Fulkerson off the court.
Fulkerson's good.
I don't know. He has punchable face. I'll say that.
All right, that's not very nice.
It just is. No disrespect.
Disrespect.
Very disrespectful, but no disrespect meant.
He's got good footwork, smooth lefty. Yeah.
Should we go on to LSU?
Let's go on to LSU. I'll kick it off here. They lose their top 3 scorers from last year, all 16-plus point per game scorers, with Cam Thomas, Javonte Smart, and Trendon Watford all going to the NBA. 2 of the 3 did not get selected in the draft, so maybe they should have came back. Darius Days is back. And then they had Adam Miller, former 5-star recruit from Illinois. And Xavier Pinson, who had a very solid season for Missouri in the SEC last year. They add him also, and they also add another guy I really like, and obviously LSU's defense under Will Wade hasn't been very good. They're going to score a lot of points and not play a lot of defense. Tari Eason is one of the more well-rounded defenders in all of college basketball. I absolutely love his game. He can defend every position on the floor. He's strong and a really good athlete. I think he's going to bring a lot to this LSU team. He's a work in progress on the offensive end, but man, he is fun to watch. He makes playing defense look fun. That's what he does. Even to the casual fan, you'll be like, okay, this guy makes defense, look like an art form, which it really is. And then you have Epton Reed coming in as a 5-star recruit. He was considering Pittsburgh, but then he's like, again, it's Pittsburgh. They haven't been good since DeJuan Blair and Sam Young, so he decided to go to LSU instead.
Yeah, I think he made the choice to be more relevant next season.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's never good.
Yeah. They weren't bad back when it was when they got rid of Jamie Dixon. They went to...
Yeah, the Kevin Stallings era could have been better.
I don't know if it could have been worse. I'll say that.
I mean, they went 8-24 his second season before he got fired.
He literally made all the players hate him and transfer. That's how bad he was.
Marcus Carr was on that team, wasn't he? Yeah, Marcus Carr. Ryan Luther transferred to Arizona. Parker Stewart, now at Indiana after transferring to UT Martin. Shamil Stevenson, he transferred like 6 different times. Kene Chukwuka, he ended up at Pepperdine. Yeah, there's a lot of guys on this team that didn't say.
Yeah. Theoretically, if Jeff Capel would have kept all those guys, maybe we're talking about Pittsburgh differently.
Yeah, I mean, if Marcus Carr stays his whole career at Pittsburgh, he's out of eligibility by now. But, that could have led them to a tournament at some point.
Well, wouldn't he get the free year?
No, because he redshirted at Minnesota.
Yeah, but last year was a free year.
But he would have been
senior now.
He would have.
So he could have theoretically came back to.
Hold on, is that true? Hold up. So he was a freshman in 20. I'm bad at math, so let's hold on here. So 2017-18, he was a freshman.
Yeah.
So he redshirted after his freshman year.
Yeah.
At Minnesota. So he didn't play in 2018-2019. So let's say he did. He would have been a sophomore. How does he have 1 or 2 years left now? I'm so confused now. What just happened? Okay, hold on. So he would have had another. So does he have 2 years of eligibility left? Was he a junior last year? Was he a redshirt junior?
Yeah, he was a junior, I think.
What? He was. What just happened? I had no idea. That's the wildest thing I've ever heard in my life. I can't believe that. So Texas could have 2 years of Marcus Carr if they want to, or if Marcus Carr wants to.
Yeah, that's the bigger one. If Marcus Carr,
I didn't even think about that. Well, that's crazy.
Theoretically, yes.
I'm awful at math, but that my scientific conclusion is that Marcus Carr can play 2 more college seasons if he wants to.
There we go. As for LSU, I think they kind of just did the things to fit the role. Like Xavier Pinson will run the point. Adam Miller will stand in the corner, shoot threes. Darius Days.
I think Miller wants to run the point, though. I think that's the thing. I think Miller transferred because he wanted to run the point, and he knew he wasn't going to at Illinois. I think they're going to let him run the point. I don't know, but I think he'll run it a little bit.
Will Wade will do whatever. It's a player's system. So maybe he will. I would personally have Pinson run the point, but I guess theoretically Miller can run the point some possessions. Give Darius Days, who I think is a really kind of overall solid piece to have on your roster. He's a good 3-point shooter. That's something that can translate. If you're going to have Pinson, Miller, Darius Days, that's 3 good shooters. You have Tari Eason, you can probably slide into the starting rotation and fill it out with Efton Reed. That's a good solid starting 5. Then kind of elsewhere, you have like Aaron Gaines, who could play some minutes. You have Mawani Wilkinson, Brandon Murray, freshman, you could put in there. You have still Sharif O'Neal's on the team. He's nowhere near as good as Shaq, but he is an O'Neal.
Yeah, I think Wilkinson ends up starting probably. He was pretty impressive as a freshman in limited minutes. Really good athlete, good player. I think he's going to be a good piece for LSU in the future. Could end up starting. But having a guy like Tari Eason, his versatility allows you to play that kind of lineup you mentioned. You can play Pinson and Miller, and then Eason can play the 3. I mean, he can defend all 5 positions pretty easily. Great athlete and really strong. He can do both those things. Again, he's not the best offensive player. That's a work in progress. But he can score at the bucket. He's not going to really make threes or free throws right now. Maybe that improves. But Darius Days can. He can hit a 3, and he can defend a little bit. Efton Reed is more of a post player. But, the defense with Tari Eason at the 3 and Darius Days at the 4 and Efton Reed at the 5 could bring Will Wade one of his best defenses, probably his best defense at LSU.
There we go. Just take Tari Eason out of the rotation. Will Wade does not want any part of defense.
No, I mean, I don't think they would have gotten him if he didn't think his defense needed some improvement.
That is probably true.
I mean, you could have easily just not gotten Tari Eason. I mean, when you look at Will Wade's defense, I guess in general it wasn't great. I mean, at VCU it wasn't bad. 24th and 41st in Ken Palm's defensive rankings. At LSU, it's been a complete disaster. 136, 59. That's pretty good. I mean, you'll take 59. 179 and 124. That's got to get better.
Yeah.
They love running up and down the floor and hitting shots and playing in transition, but you really got to have a better defense if you're going to be a real contender.
Yeah. And I think to make the determinant, you have to have a better defense than you have to have a top 100 defense with this offensive talent to make the NCAA tournament. Like, this is a solid offensive roster. I think I'm not a huge Pinson, Adam Miller backcourt fan. Darius Days is good. Efton Reed is good. But, like, you're going to need to – I think you need to have a top 100 defense if this offensive rotation is going to lead you to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you don't have the same offensive punch you did last year. If you needed a bucket last year, you're going to Cam Thomas. No question. Who's that guy this year? You don't know right now. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It was Javonte Smart if it wasn't Cam Thomas, but it was always Cam Thomas. But you had those 2 guys. That was the options. This year it's, what kind of Xavier Pinson will we get today? Will we get the guy who dropped 39 against TCU, or are we going to get the guy who had 5 points in a conference game last year? Or Adam Miller, can he be the guy, the highly touted 5-star recruit he was? Or is he going to be the, 8-point per game guy who was at Illinois?
Yeah, those are certainly going to be the big questions. But, yeah, I think if LSU can improve defensively, they'll be back in the NCAA tournament. But they have to get better defensively because Trenton Watford, Javonte Smart, and Cam Thomas aren't walking through that door. No,
definitely a solid team, not a great team. A lot of questions, but I think the upside is there for them to be a very good team.
Absolutely. Next team is – so I had Florida ahead of LSU. You had LSU ahead of Florida. But as for the Florida Gators, they obviously – Keontae Johnson, we will kind of wait and see upon whether he plays this year. I would say I'm going to lean he does play. Can't be confident, but I don't think he'll be what he was the previous
I mean, we just
year.
don't know. That's the biggest thing. Like, we just have no idea.
Yeah, that's a big one. So we'll see about him, but I mean, elsewhere, Tyree Appleby will probably step in and be the starting point guard now that Trey Mann is off to the NBA. You still have Colin Castleton to dump the ball to inside. Myron Jones is certainly kind of a good three-point shooter. You have Anthony Duruji, CJ Felder, who will play minutes at the 3. You have Niles Lane, Flanders Fleming, Brandon McKissick, you can kind of have at one of the maybe like the 3-guard spot. So I don't hate this roster. Mike White, he improved as a coach last season. He got better. The tempo was better, more of what it should be. Hopefully continues to play a faster tempo. But yeah, I think Florida will be at least competitive for an NCAA tournament bid.
Yeah, Keontae Johnson's health, of course, is more important than basketball. Hopefully, and by all things I see, I mean, he seems to be doing really well. So hopefully that continues, and hopefully he's able to play. But if not, he's going to be able to be a really good coach at the college level because Florida's going to give him that opportunity to be around the program like he was last year. And he just seems like an incredible young man. So just his story is just really inspirational in general, seeing everything he went through, and now seeing him at this point. Hopefully, I mean, it's gonna be an emotional night if he's able to play. I'll say that. Like even it's just gonna be emotional for everybody. I feel like even just from our perspective, the way we saw that go down, the way he collapsed on the floor, and it was just that whole day was really scary in general. Just we're like, man, like is he gonna be okay? Like it was just super scary, but he was able to come out of it all right, and hopefully he continues to progress in his health. But when you look at the roster, a guy like Flanders Fleming Jr. coming in from Charleston Southern, they were absolutely terrible last year, but I think he's a really good player. He was our only good player. He had 35 points in his final game against Presbyterian. They did not. Charleston Southern didn't play in the Conference Big South tournament because of COVID issues. They just ended their season. I believe they had a COVID positive. Fleming had 35 points and hit the game winner from about 30 feet to beat Presbyterian. Fleming is an absolute bucket getter. I mean, he's a good athlete and he just gets buckets. He's a guy that should average like 12 to 15 for Florida this year. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. He was on a really bad team, and I think being on a better team, he could shoot close to 40%. From deep, he has good size, and he's just an overall really good player. He can defend. I think he's one of the more underrated players that transferred into the SEC this year.
Yeah, Flanders Fleming's going to be good. I'd probably play, if I'm looking at this starting rotation, Tyree Appleby will run the point. Then you have Jones and Fleming playing at the 2 and the 3. Then Durgy and Colin Castleton at the 4 and the 5. But CJ Felder, Brandon McKissick are going to be good pieces. You have Kawase Reeves, freshman who can come in, probably not going to start, but he'll contribute minutes for this team. Florida doesn't necessarily have I like that kind of 8-man rotation. You still have Niles Lane, who could potentially play some minutes. Jason Jabowicz, probably not expecting too much out of him. He'll have some big men in front of him, but maybe he plays if Colin Castleton gets in foul trouble. But look at this roster. I think the shooting is there. It's improved, maybe even definitely from a couple years ago. Losing Noah Locke, Trey Mann, I mean, that's not obviously ideal, but I think Mike White did a good enough job to kind of fill the gap a little bit, getting Myron Jones, who I think is maybe even a better version of Noah Locke. And then obviously you can't really replace Trey Mann without a superstar freshman. They don't get one, but they get some solid pieces in Flanders Fleming, Brandon McKissick, that should help kind of fill the void a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Florida did a really good job replenishing their roster in the portal. They did lose guys, of course, Trey Mann, Scotty Lewis, Noah Locke, 3 starters from last year. But adding guys like McKissick and Fleming, getting Castleton back is, of course, huge. But this season, I mean, they could be a, consistent top 25 team if Keontae Johnson's back. He could be a legitimate first or second team All-American, Conference Player of the Year kind of guy. But if not, they're still a tournament level team. But if they get Johnson, they're going to be a lot better in 6th or 7th in the conference.
Yeah. Assuming he's back to his old self.
I think if he comes back, he will be. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, if he comes back and then, what type of Keontae Johnson. Because, you don't go away from basketball for essentially probably a year and get better. You're going to be worse than what you were previously, but how much worse is kind of the key for, I guess, Keontae Johnson.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. We're going to go into the number 8 team. I think you had them obviously higher. I think I had Ole Miss ahead of Mississippi State, but they're number 8 in the final tally, so we'll go to them. Why do you like Mississippi State?
Turns out I was on mute while I was talking about Mississippi State. My apologies. But going back to what I said while I was on mute, you lose DJ Stewart. That's a tough loss. He ended up going undrafted. He was a really good player, potentially their best player last year. You get Iverson Molinar back. He's a really good guard. You add Garrison Brooks from North Carolina, who had 16 points per game 2 years ago. Wasn't as good last year, but he's a solid big man inside. Not a great defender, but he can score at the rim. But the biggest thing for me is, are you going to play Garrison Brooks and Tolu Smith together a lot of minutes? Because if so, I don't think that maximizes the talent of this team. I think splitting their minutes up 20 and 20 probably works out well, because the defense, if you're leaving let's say you have Garrison Brooks or Tolu Smith on the perimeter, leave them open every time, and if they shoot the ball, that's a win for the defense, even if they make it. If Garrison Brooks or Tolu Smith are making a three, that's still a win for the defense, because you're forcing them to take a three. They aren't three-point shooters, and that's not their game. They're both post big men, and we've seen, like I mentioned earlier, that's just an old-school way of playing basketball. That doesn't really work as much nowadays, and it doesn't maximize floor spacing. Iverson Molinar is not going to have lanes as big to drive at the basket because he has two big men standing there in his way. Maybe one sets a screen, but overall, I think having a guy like Derek Fountain playing the 4 alongside one of the two big men, and then having Molinar at the 1, and then rounding out the lineup with a few other guys could definitely be a solid way of having it. I don't necessarily love Mississippi State, just because I fear that the way they're going to play that lineup is with Tolu Smith and Garrison Brooks together, which, again, I don't think that's a way to do it. Maybe I'll end up being wrong, but if they end up playing Derek Fountain a good amount of minutes, who's 6'7", can really shoot the ball, I think this Mississippi State team could be an NCAA tournament level team.
Yeah, I really like kind of the roster construction if it's not Garrison Brooks and Tolu Smith on the court together. If that is a floor spacing nightmare, and Mississippi State will fail miserably, maybe be worse than Georgia. Probably not, but Iverson Molinar is a very good point guard. He's the type of guy you trust running the team. You have Rocket Watts, who he needs to just be like freshman year Rocket Watts, who just like stands in the corner, shoots threes. If you can get that, and he shoots like 30% from 3 or 33% from 3, like that's not a terrible version of Rocket Watts, and you can kind of live with that. And then obviously you have DJ Jeffries, Derek Fountain, who should play like the 3 and the 4. Fountain, a good 3-point shooter. DJ Jeffrey, who's I think a better almost interior scorer, but I think that's a good 3 and the 4.
Great defender too.
Yeah. And then you obviously have Garrison Brooks, Tolu Smith, who basically are the same player, except
Tolu Smith is better.
Yeah, except Tolu Smith and Garrison, basically same player. Then Shaquille Moore can provide some spark off the bench. You have Cameron Matthews. This team has some high upside. Theoretically, they could make the NCAA tournament. It's Ben Howland coaching. He's old and washed, so I will go with them missing the NCAA tournament. But I could see them making it.
Yeah, I like Shaquille Moore a lot coming in from NC State. Great athlete, rocket watts, like you said. He's not a point guard. He needs to just, play his role as a guy who's going to catch and shoot the ball. He can drive a little bit. He's a scoring guard. He needs to play that role probably as a six man off the bench is what it'll end up being. But I like a lineup of, going Iverson Molinar and Shaquille Moore. Then you go DJ Jeffries, Derek Fountain, and Garrison Brooks or Tolu Smith at the five. I think that's the best way to play this team.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would personally like slide Rocket Watts. I think if you can get him playing off the ball, I think that's a good combination next to Iverson Molinar. But I think you'll see Molinar play 30 to 35 minutes a game, and then they'll kind of just work Rocket Watts and Shaquille Moore in kind of. They'll play 20 to 25 minutes a game each. So I think that's kind of how they'll go about it at the guard spot. Then the key, obviously, you need Fountain, DJ Jeffries to be on the court at the 3 and the 4 together. You cannot have Tolu Smith and Garrison Brooks be either one of them being the 4-man.
It's not going to work. It's not going to.
No, it will be a major fail.
Yep. And then heading into the next Mississippi team, then is that who's next?
Yep, Mississippi.
Alrighty. I mean, last year they got pretty close to the tournament there. I mean, they really had a late season resurgence, but they ended up falling short going to the NIT. Romello White and Devontae Shuler, probably the two best players on the team, depart. But you had some really good freshmen with Deshaun Ruffin and James White, who I think is going to be a really underrated player. He really skyrocketed up the ratings this season, and he's just wired to score. He's the kind of guy that could lead Ole Miss in scoring. But that's my big question for them. The scoring is not good. I mean, you lose Shuler, who is by far your best scorer last season. They ranked 109th in offensive efficiency on KenPom, 25th in defensive efficiency. Jarkel Joyner was just really bad three-point shooting wise, only 26%. Luis Rodriguez is one of the best defenders in the conference, so that's what he brings to the table. He shot 33% from deep. That's not bad, but it's not great. But also when it's your best number that isn't from a guy not named Devontae Shuler, it is pretty bad. They just need to find somebody that's going to shoot the ball really well. I think that guy is probably James White, but they need guys like Matthew Morrell to play a bigger role. Niceer Brooks should occupy some good minutes there at the 5. I think overall this Mississippi team is probably like an NIT level team. Jamin Brakefield from Duke also coming in. I don't think they're a great team. They have high upside, but I just don't love the floor of this team.
Yeah, I think they'll at least be kind of a solid team going into next season. I think Jarkel Joyner can kind of step in and run the point. I don't think he'll be as good as Devontae Shuler, but he could run it. You have Luis Rodriguez who could do it. You obviously have James White kind of playing off the ball, probably starting at 2 or the 3, however they kind of do it. You have Matthew Morrell as well, who will get some minutes, maybe come off the bench. You have Ty Fagan, who will probably get some minutes playing off the bench. I like the addition of Jamin Brakefield. I think he's kind of like a good buy low type candidate who will kind of step up and have a good season. And then Nazir Brooks, I think, is a really good 5-man. So I don't think this Ole Miss team's going to be an NCAA tournament team by any means, but I think they'll be at least solid.
Yeah, for sure. I think they'll be a solid team, and I think that's what you get with Kermit Davis teams. They might not have the highest upside, but they'll be solid for sure.
Let's move on to Vanderbilt and potential player of the year, Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yeah, Scottie Pippen Jr. was awesome last year. He tested the NBA waters, got an invite to the G League Elite Camp, had a solid showing there, but decided he was better off coming back to school. And scoring-wise, he led the conference, or he was second in conference scoring behind Cam Thomas, had 20 points per game, 5 assists per game, shot a really good percentage from not great, I guess, 36%. I thought it was a little better. But he was really the only player on the team besides Dylan Disu that was good. Disu now at Texas. They pretty much swapped Dylan Disu for Liam Robbins, and I think for this team, Liam Robbins probably fits more. Disu led the SEC in rebounding last year, but Robbins is more of a traditional big man, and he can also hit threes, but I think he fits really well on this team. You have some high upside guys like Jordan Wright, who I think could be pretty good. Miles Stute could also be pretty solid during his sophomore season. But you also lose some of your decent role players, Maxwell Evans, DJ Harvey. They're both gone. But, I think they're missing pieces for sure. They had a few scholarships they just didn't use, which I would have probably used if I were them. But I think they're missing like a third and fourth best player. But when you have a guy as good as Scottie Pippen Jr. and a guy as solid as Liam Robbins, you'll win some games. They're not going to be terrible.
Yeah, that's a good two-man combination. You have Rodney Chapman coming in from Dayton. I think he'll at least be solid. I don't expect him to necessarily, go out and be a superstar, but if he can be your third best player, that your team's not terrible. You have Jordan Wright, who will be solid, kind of relying upon Miles Stute, Trey Thomas having like breakout seasons. But I mean, overall, this Vanderbilt team, you can buy some upside. I'm certainly not going to, come into the season calling them an NCAA tournament team. I think that would be a bit much. But if you told me, hey, they make the NIT, Scottie Pippen Jr., balls out, and this team is, halfway decent, I can see that.
Yeah, I don't really see NCAA tournament in this team's future this year, but Scottie Pippen Jr. is a blast to watch. He's really quick and can shoot the ball, really feisty defender. He's going to be one of the more intriguing players to watch next season for sure.
Yeah, and if Vanderbilt makes the NCAA tournament,
he's
give
conference
Scottie
player of the year.
Yeah, pretty easy. Even if they're not, if they're like in the NCAA tournament conversation, even if they're on the wrong side of the boat, give Scottie Pippen Jr. the Conference Player of the Year award.
Yep, and I will mention the Final Four teams here that are not even close to NCAA tournament contention. Starting off with Texas A&M. It's, been better years for Buzz Williams for sure. He loses his best player with Emmanuel Miller transferring. You lose Savion Flagg, who transferred. You lose Quentin Jackson's back. You lose J.J. Chandler, who transferred. Kevin Marfo didn't really play much, but he transferred back to Quinnipiac. But here's the thing with Texas A&M the last 2 years. Funny enough, on Ken Palm, they've had the 334th slowest tempo in the country, both of Buzz Williams' years in College Station. They've turned the ball over far too often, both of the last 2 years, and they shot the ball from deep over 40% of the time each of the last 2 years, and shots under 30% in both of them, 29% in both years. So consistent, if nothing else, but consistent in a bad way because they've been consistently really bad during the 2 years of the Buzz Williams era. He just hasn't really had a go-to guard, and he has that guy this year with Marcus Williams coming in from Wyoming. He is a really good player that I think could step in from day one and be, a 15, 16 point per game guy. He stepped in the Mountain West last year and had some massive games, but you're losing your best player from last year with Emmanuel Miller to TCU. That's a big-time loss. They briefly had a commitment from Jordan Hall, who ended up going back to St. Joe's. But besides that, you have Javonte Brown, who transferred in from UConn, Henry Coleman coming in from Duke, a few guys who are, trying to put their career back on the tracks. And Manny Obaseki, who's a really gifted scorer. He could end up being the lead scorer for this team, too. He's a 5-star recruit. So you have two really good scoring guards, something that Buzz Williams hasn't had at Texas A&M. So maybe that fixes some of the shooting woes. But the depth on this team isn't very good. So I'm not sure what we end up seeing there. But, I like Marcus Williams a lot. Manny Obaseki is also fun to watch. So I think they could be a better team next year, but they're not a tournament team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, I don't hate the guard combination of Obaseki, Hassan Diarra, Marcus Williams, Quentin Jackson, Andre Gordon. I think that's going to be solid, kind of whichever three guards actually end up playing on the court. That will be very solid. I think Henry Coleman's kind of a good player to put at the 4 spot. We'll see. Maybe Javonte Brown probably plays the 5 for this team. There's room to be somewhat optimistic about Texas A&M. they're just not a tournament team. That's kind of where I draw the line. Like, unless Manny Obiseki and Marcus Williams are way better than we think they will be.
I think both are really good. That's the thing, though. I think both are really good. I just don't think the rest of the team around them is good.
Yeah. And then you need Hassan Diarra, Henry Coleman, Andre Gordon to all take a significant leap. And then you need Javonte Brown to be good at the 5. You need too much needs to happen for Texas A&M to be a tournament team.
Yeah, I mean, Texas A&M, they got hot at the end of the 2019-2020 season, but they started the year with losses to Harvard, Temple, and Fairfield, and Texas in a 4-game stretch. That's a disastrous 4-game stretch. Losing to Fairfield, who finished 301st in KenPom that year, that's rough. But, yeah, I mean, consistent if nothing else. They've been consistently really bad on offense the past 2 years. They got to look for that to change this year. And I think it will change. They just don't have a big man like Emmanuel Miller or Josh Nebo that they had in 2019-2020 to handle the load. So I think they got better at the guard spot, but like I said, you don't have a Miller and you don't have a Josh Nebo, who was really good for Buzz Williams in his first year at College Station.
Yeah. Moving on, the number 12 team, we both had number 12. It is the Missouri Tigers. They traded in Mark Smith for DeJuan Gordon, probably a downgrade.
They lost that trade. Yeah, that's a bad trade. It's like trading, I don't know, fantasy football wise. It's like trading, I don't know, Allen Robinson for T.Y. Hilton. You're getting a receiver back, but he's not as good.
Yeah, pretty much that. You have Drew Smith, Xavier Pinson, and Jeremiah Tillman.
All gone.
So long. Farewell. Yeah, so it's the Kobe Brown show right now.
It's the Kobe Brown and Javon Pickett show.
Yeah, Kobe Brown, Javon Pickett, DeJuan Gordon. That's going to be 3 best players. Then you're just kind of
you had Jaron Coleman from Ball State, a really good scoring guard with good size. I think he could end up being their first or second best player potentially. So I wouldn't underrate him. Amari Davis from Green Bay, he improved a lot from year 1 to year 2. He made 0 threes his freshman year and made over 30 his second year. And Ronnie DeGray from UMass, I think he's a solid role player. I don't think he's a great player, but him being the 5th best player on the team just shows that Missouri's not a very good team.
Yeah. I would almost say if early in the season things are going awry, I would just play Anton Brookshire, Yaya, Kaida, Trayvon Brazil, and Sean Dewar
Gordon, I believe.
Dewar Gordon. So they have DeJuan Gordon and Dewar Gordon. Yeah, I would say maybe playing them a lot of minutes and get them some development wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But yeah,
Jordan Wilmore is 7'3".
Yeah, there you go. Play some freshmen. Why not?
Yeah.
Not like you're going to win any games.
Trayvon Brazil and Yaya Keita, maybe. I think it's Keita. So, yeah, you have some freshmen coming in.
Yeah. At the very least, I think they'll be better than South Carolina and Georgia.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for this Missouri team is that Konzo Martin's probably on the hot seat after the year.
Yeah. I don't think he enters this year on the hot seat.
No. Getting to the tournament saved him. He was on the hot seat probably entering last year, and they ended up making the tournament. So that was big. They obviously were really bad after, January. They were actually terrible after January. They lost 5 games. 7. No, that's not how you do math. They lost 8 games from February 6th on. And I'm still wrong. It was 7. But they lost 7 games from. It might have been 6. I don't know. I suck at counting. I suck at math. And it's also 10 o'clock at night. So they lost 6 or 7 games from February 6th on, and they lost in the first round of the tournament to Oklahoma, and they lost pretty much everybody from that team. So I think that Konzo is not a bad coach, but he's definitely going to enter the year next year on the hot seat if they're bad this year.
Yeah, I I could see that. And if Kim English does well at George Mason next 2 years, he will be the next Missouri head coach. Hot take.
Okay. All right. What about Todd Golden?
You think Todd Golden wants to go to Missouri?
I think his bank account would like him to go to Missouri, yeah.
No, he has bigger aspirations. He's gonna
Northwestern?
No. I said bigger
Northwestern?
aspirations.
Yeah,
Cal
bigger Cal?
Cal.
Nah,
Cal should
is that really
honestly
bigger?
hire him
They
right.
suck. They're always terrible.
But you get to stay on the west time zone.
You might as well stay at San Francisco. I mean, the Cal had one good player last year, Matt Bradley, and he left. So now they have no good players.
Fine. He will go to USC.
Where's Andy Enfield going?
The NBA. There we go.
That's not no NBA team's ever hiring Andy Enfield to do anything. Let's say, we said Oregon State last year. We got to put Todd Golden somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, in the Pac-12, Washington, Mike Hopkins could be on the way out.
There we go, Washington. That's
That
a
works,
perfect fit.
Golden to UW.
There we go. Back to South Carolina.
They're terrible. I mean, we
have
don't need to
Eric
get too deep into
Stevenson.
them. Yeah, they have Keyshawn Bryant, who's actually a really good player. Then you have Eric Stevenson, who's a shooter that can't shoot, and the rest of the team is bad. So that's where you get. I mean, Jermaine Kusnar is not bad. And then they traded Chico Carter, or they traded Trey Hannibal to Murray State for Chico Carter. They lost that trade, and the rest of the team's bad. So that's where we are with this one.
Hey, they won the trade. They have a kid named Chico on their team.
And I think that Trey Hannibal is way better.
It doesn't matter if he's good. It's all about appeasing the student section for South Carolina. And Chico Carter, you'll have they'll make like Chico signs in the student section. That's all you need.
He's gonna be a fan favorite.
Yeah. I mean, there's not
All right.
much else to cheer on with this team. You have Jermaine Kusnard, I guess.
Chico is a pretty cool name, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess Keyshawn Bryant is back.
Keyshawn Bryant's good. Really good athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they finish better than 13th. Maybe they finish 12th. But they will finish
finishing 14th. Yeah. Who's finishing 14th? Georgia. This team sucks. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. This team's terrible.
I was saying to you pre-podcast, I thought, back in like March, I was like, Georgia's going to be good next year. Well, I jinxed it. Everyone transferred. Yeah, they're terrible. Get them out of my face.
This team's bad. Aaron Cook's their best player. He was fine for Gonzaga. He was good at Southern Illinois. Jabri Abdur-Rahim, I still think has a really high upside. And then you have Noah Bauman, who's a fine shooter. Jalen Ingram, who's not really a high major player. Dallin Ridgenall coming in from JUCO. He's 6'6" and can shoot, but he's not much besides that. PJ Horn, he's like their second best player, which tells you everything you need to know about this team. Braylon Bridges, he's not really a high major guy either. Jonathan Ned, he didn't really do anything last year. This team's just really bad. I think that's a conclusion we're at here.
Yeah, no other way of doing it. Like, PJ Horn was like their fifth best player last year. Now he's arguably maybe their best player. Jabri Abdur-Rahim was garbage at Virginia. Couldn't even crack the rotation.
He played like one game, yeah. But like the thing about Georgia, like, okay, so usually by year 4 you're supposed to get it going, right? That's a big year. Year 4 in college football, college basketball, that's always seen as all right. You're getting your guys. This is the year you got to get it going. Tom Crean entering year 4 lost his entire team. So, Tom Crean might be on the hot seat. He might be, being an ambassador for Little Caesars pretty soon here.
There we go. That's what he really wants to do. He just.
I mean, I didn't know he had such. I didn't know he had such an affection. Is that the word affection? I guess so, right? For Little Caesars pizza. I mean, it's okay. It is what it is. Like, if I'm spending, I also don't think it's $5 anymore. I think that's a lie. I'm pretty sure it's more than that. But if you go to Little Caesars, you know what you're getting. You're getting pizza. You're getting food. It's cheap. and it is what it is. It's kind of like this Georgia team. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get a team that's going to probably lose every conference game.
Yeah, they might win a game against South Carolina.
I legitimately don't think this
At
team.
home.
I can't see them winning a conference game. I just can't see it.
I will go over on the 0.5. I might, like, if Vegas were setting the odds, it probably would be like at 2.5. I would go under on that.
Yeah, I mean, this team's just terrible. And, like, I'm not trying to be rude here. Just the team's not good. I'm not going to lie and act like there's some, like, I'm not going to act like there's some, like, upside here where, like, hey, maybe Georgia wins 3 games in the Like, they're terrible. They're not going to win 3 games in the conference. This team's just bad.
If Kario Okwuandu becomes Zion Williamson, Georgia will still not make the NCAA tournament. I
mean, Jabri Abdur-Rahim could, average 20 a game, and yeah, they're not making the tournament. They had Anthony. This is like Georgia. They had Anthony Edwards, the first pick. They went 16-16. Last year, they got hot late. They went 14-12. I guess they really didn't get hot. I feel like they got a lot hotter than they were. They weren't hot at any point in the season. But
they weren't hot, but they weren't cold.
Yeah, like they won a lot of games that you're like, okay. And then they just lost a lot of them where you're like, okay, cool. They lost by 21 to South Carolina. Like, that's absolutely a disaster. They allowed 115 to Alabama. Like, they weren't even good last year. They haven't been good any year of the Tom Crean era, and they're going to be like 190th in Ken Pom this year.
They were good enough last year to where they, like, had a good record. But this year...
They beat LSU by 13. How?
Well, none of those teams played defense, and Georgia made shots on that night. Probably what happened.
Tumani Kamara had 22, and you know what he did? He left.
Yeah.
He went to Dayton. He transferred from Georgia to Dayton. And you know what? I don't blame him. Dayton's a better program.
Yeah. The only player who, like, stayed was P.J. Horn.
And he's from Georgia. That's why he stayed, probably.
Yeah.
He transferred from Virginia. He transferred from Virginia Tech to Georgia to go back home.
He could get like 20 shots a game because who else is going to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Georgia, like, maybe you got to start hiring, like, players' parents as assistants or something. That seems to work.
Yeah, just
hire Monty Bates' dad as an assistant.
I don't even think that would get Amani Bates.
I mean, they somehow got Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
I think he was from Georgia, too.
I don't even think... Yeah, he was. I don't even think Amani Bates is fixing this team.
No. Do you remember, though, when Anthony Edwards hit a game-winning shot against Chaminade?
I do remember that.
And the Maui Invitational beat the Silver Swords?
To get the 7th place medal.
I mean, they beat D2's Chaminade Silver Swords, which might be the best name in all of college sports, period. The Chaminade Silver Swords? Are you kidding me?
Very good name.
They are the Silver Swords, right? I'm not making that up.
I believe so.
Okay, they are the Silver Swords. I thought so. I was like, there's no way I just made that up.
One, I knew it was like something like that, and 2, you were very confident in it.